The first time he called me Mom, I stood frozen, holding a tray of half-cut apples, a wet cloth still tucked into the waistband of my uniform. I wasn't his mother. I was the maid. But the way his small arms wrapped around my waist, the way he buried his tear-soaked face in my apron, something shifted in me. Something I didn't ask for, and yet, I couldn't walk away from. His name was Aiden Carter, 6 years old, with the kind of eyes that made silence feel heavy. Hazel, like fading sunlight through old glass, always scanning the world with a question he was too afraid to ask. And me? I was Maya Raymond, 32, undocumented, invisible, and unimportant to most, except to the boy who called me Mom. I'd been working at the Carter estate for 4 months. Hired quietly, no interviews, no formalities. The house manager, Mrs. Templeton, gave me clear instructions: stay out of personal business. Clean, cook, disappear. That suited me just fine. After all, I wasn't here to make friends. I needed money, fast. My sister back home in Lahore needed surgery, and I'd take any job to make it happen. But everything changed the day Mrs. Carter died. Aiden's real mother. She had collapsed during a charity gala, aneurysm, sudden and brutal. One moment, laughter and champagne. The next, chaos, sirens, and black dresses. No warning, no time for goodbye. After the funeral, the house turned hollow. Mr. Carter, once full of ego and emails, shut himself inside his study, lost in whiskey and unread documents. The nannies rotated weekly, none of them lasted. Aiden grew quieter, paler. He stopped speaking entirely for 3 weeks. Until that day. It was raining hard, cold, slanted sheets tapping the tall glass windows of the playroom where I'd found him curled up beneath a table, clutching his mother's old scarf. I bent down, my voice soft. "Sweetheart, you'll catch a cold. Come here." And that's when he looked at me. Like really looked at me. His lips trembled, his tiny chest heaving. And then, he ran into my arms and whispered, "Mom." I couldn't correct him. Maybe it was his grief. Maybe he saw something familiar in me. Or maybe the world had taken so much from him that his mind decided to make me someone I wasn't, someone he needed. Either way, I didn't pull away. Days passed. He followed me everywhere, kitchen, garden, laundry room. He waited for me outside the bathroom like a loyal puppy. He laughed again. Ate properly. Slept through the night. It was as if, through me, a piece of his mother had returned. I should have told someone. Set boundaries. Reminded him, and myself, of my place. But when a child finds comfort in you, when his small hand fits inside yours and his nightmares stop, how do you walk away? Then came the whispering. I overheard it between the staff: "She's playing a dangerous game. She's crossing lines. What does she think she is? The boy's mother?" And maybe they were right. But I didn't care. Because for the first time in years, I felt seen. Not as a cleaner. Not as a maid. But as someone who mattered. And Aiden, he was healing. That was enough for me. Until he came back. Mr. Carter. 3 weeks after burying his wife, he reappeared at breakfast, unshaven, disoriented, and clearly unaware of the new dynamic between me and his son. I was helping Aiden with his cereal when he said it again, loud and clear, "Mom, can I have more milk?" The silence that followed was suffocating. Mr. Carter looked up, spoon midair. His eyes darted between us, confused, furious, and something else I couldn't place. "What did you just call her?" he asked, his voice cold, cutting. Aiden smiled innocently. Mommy always said Maya takes care of me. So, she's my new mom now, right? I didn't know what to say. The air crackled with tension. Mr. Carter's gaze hardened. Maya, my office. Now. That's when I knew, whatever peace we had built, was about to be destroyed. Mr. Carter's office was colder than I remembered. The tall windows were closed, but the silence inside had a sharper edge than the winter wind outside. He didn't offer me a seat. I stood there, stiff, hands folded, eyes low, like I always had during the early weeks when we hardly spoke. But now, the air between us wasn't just distant. It was charged. What exactly is going on here, Maya? He asked, his voice measured, but the fury was unmistakable beneath the surface. I didn't answer right away. What could I say? That his grieving son clung to the only comfort he could find. That I, a maid with no right to feel, had let myself care too much. I never told him to call me that, I finally said, voice barely above a whisper. It just happened. He scoffed, turning toward the window. So you didn't encourage it? You didn't think it was confusing for him? Inappropriate? I flinched. Inappropriate. The word stung more than I expected. I didn't have the heart to correct him, I said quietly. He needed someone. He turned sharply. He has a father. Then be one, I snapped before I could stop myself. Silence. I had crossed a line. I knew it. I should have apologized, should have begged to stay. But I didn't. Because for once, I wanted him to hear the truth, not from a house manager, or a therapist, or a bottle of scotch, but from someone who had actually been there. You locked yourself away, I continued, breath shaking. He cried every night, alone. He begged to hear her voice again. And when no one else came, I did. I held him. I told him stories. I made him eat. You may not like it, but that little boy, your son, started breathing again because someone stayed. His face was stone. But his hands? They were trembling. I didn't ask for this, I said, softer now. I'm not trying to replace her. But he called me Mom, and I didn't correct him. Because I didn't have the heart to take away the only thing that made him smile. He leaned back against the desk, silent. Then, you remind him of her. That caught me off guard. She had your gentleness. The way you hum while you cook. The way you kneel when you talk to him instead of towering over him. The scarf you wear around your hair, it's exactly like the one she wore before all the money and pearls. I didn't know what to say. My heart raced, not out of fear now, but something else, something heavier. She loved jasmine tea, he added absently, looking down. You made that for him the other night, didn't you? I nodded slowly. He exhaled, rubbing his temples. I wasn't ready for that moment. To hear him call someone else Mom. I thought I'd have more time. I thought, his voice cracked. He stopped. For the first time since I'd arrived, I saw the man behind the suits and schedules, a husband who lost his wife, a father too broken to hold his son. I'm sorry, he said after a long pause. Not just for this morning. For everything. I didn't know he was hurting that much. He hides it well, I said gently. Just like you. We stood there, quiet. I thought maybe something had shifted. Maybe he'd understand. Maybe, just maybe, he wouldn't ask me to leave. But then he looked at me with that guarded expression again. I need time to think. About what's best for Aiden. About boundaries, he said, his voice more composed now. I nodded, even though it felt like being dismissed. As I turned to leave, he said, almost reluctantly, "Don't tell him anything yet. I don't want to break him again. Just, give me a few days." I didn't respond. I just closed the door softly behind me. In the hallway, Aiden was waiting. His small fingers clutched the edge of the staircase banister. "Did Daddy get mad at you?" I bent down, forcing a smile. "No, sweetheart. He just wanted to talk." He looked unconvinced. "Are you still my mom?" I hesitated, heart aching. "For now," I whispered. "As long as you want me to be." He threw his arms around me again, and I held him tighter than I ever had before. But deep down, I knew. "For now" might be all we had. For the next 3 days, the house felt like it was holding its breath. Mr. Carter didn't speak to me beyond formal instructions. He stopped joining us for meals again, retreating to his office late into the night. The staff avoided eye contact. Mrs. Templeton returned from her leave and immediately sensed the tension. And Aiden, sweet, bright-eyed Aiden, was blissfully unaware. He still reached for my hand at bedtime. Still called me Mom when he handed me his drawings or asked for more syrup on his pancakes. I smiled and played along, but a knot twisted tighter in my chest each time. I was living a countdown, though I didn't know how many days remained. The air finally cracked on a Friday afternoon, when a silver SUV pulled into the long driveway. I was folding laundry when I saw the woman step out. Tall, blonde, perfectly polished. She wore heels too high for the cobblestone, a designer trench coat, and oversized sunglasses she didn't take off even when she entered the house. Aiden's godmother. Julianne Chambers. She hadn't visited since the funeral. And she wasn't here for pleasantries. "Where is he?" she demanded sharply, her stilettos echoing across the marble. Mrs. Templeton pointed to the office, clearly uncomfortable. Julianne stormed off without another word. I returned to my chores, trying to stay invisible. But voices started rising behind the door not long after. "You let the maid play house with your son." "She didn't, she's undocumented, Nathan. It's irresponsible. Illegal. And what happens when Aiden gets attached and she disappears overnight?" The last part hit me like a punch to the ribs. I moved closer, heart pounding, straining to hear. "She's been there for him," Mr. Carter replied, voice low but firm. "When no one else was." "Oh please. She's manipulating him. It's classic transference. You think your wife would have been okay with this?" A long silence. Then, "I don't know," he said. "But I'm not sure what I'd do if Maya left now." "Neither is Aiden. She's a liability," Julianne hissed. "And you know it." Footsteps. The door opened. I barely had time to straighten up before she spotted me at the hallway corner. "Well, look who's listening at doors," she said with a tight smile. "Sweetheart, do you have any idea how much damage you're doing to that child?" I said nothing. "Let me make it easy," she continued, her tone syrupy and cruel. "You walk away quietly, or you'll be escorted out. Legally. Permanently." Julianne, Mr. Carter appeared behind her, face pale. She turned. "You brought this on yourself." "I'm doing what your wife would have done." "No," he said flatly. "You're doing what you want." But I had already made my choice. "I'll go," I said, forcing my voice to stay calm. "Just, please let me say goodbye to him." Mr. Carter's jaw clenched. Julianne folded her arms, smug. He nodded. I found Aiden in the playroom, sitting cross-legged on the floor, building a castle with wooden blocks. He looked up and smiled. "Mom, come see," I sank down beside him. "Sweetheart. I have to leave." His hands froze. "But why?" His lip trembled. "Did I do something wrong?" "No, no, baby." I pulled him into my arms. "You did everything right. You were brave. And kind. And you loved me more than I deserve." He clung to me, small fists tangled in my scarf. "Don't go," he whispered. "I'll be alone again." I didn't know what to say. And then, Mr. Carter entered the room. He looked down at us, and something in his face shifted. He knelt beside Aiden and took his son's hand. "You won't be alone," he said softly. "I promise." He looked at me next, and his eyes weren't cold this time. They were something else, something unreadable. "She's not leaving," he said. Julianne's voice echoed from behind him. "Nathan," I said, "she's not leaving." Aiden blinked up at both of us, unsure but hopeful. And just like that, the room became still again. But I knew this wasn't over. Because Julianne wasn't going to back down. And neither was I. The calm didn't last long. By Monday morning, Julianne had filed an official complaint to the Carter family lawyer, claiming that I was exploiting Aiden's grief, overstepping my boundaries, and posing a legal risk due to my undocumented status. And worse, she wasn't acting alone. 2 members of the board overseeing the Carter Foundation, close friends of Julianne, had joined the crusade. They insisted Mr. Carter reassess his household staff for the sake of his reputation and Aiden's emotional well-being. It wasn't just about me anymore. This was about control. About legacy. About image. And Mr. Carter was under siege. I saw it in his face during breakfast, in the way his hands shook when he poured his coffee. In the silence that lingered between him and Aiden. He had barely slept. When I brought Aiden's lunch to the garden later that afternoon, Mr. Carter was already waiting. He didn't look like the composed executive I'd come to know. His shirt was wrinkled. Tie loosened. He rubbed his temples as Aiden laughed nearby, picking petals off a daisy and placing them in his cereal bowl like they were treasure. "She's threatening full custody proceedings," he said quietly, not looking at me. "If I don't remove you from the house." I felt my chest tighten. "She can't," I whispered. "She can try. She has powerful friends. And, she was named guardian in our will. Before all this." His voice dropped lower. "Before I knew you." The words hung in the air. I looked over at Aiden, who was now busy talking to a squirrel like it was his classmate. "He's not a bargaining chip," I said. "I know," he replied, eyes pained. "But Julianne sees this house as hers to control now. The staff. The foundation. My son." I took a slow breath. "What are you going to do?" He looked at me then. Really looked at me. And what I saw terrified me. Because he didn't have an answer. That night, the storm finally broke. Julianne arrived unannounced with 2 family lawyers and a court officer, holding a temporary custody petition and a motion to investigate questionable domestic arrangements. I was in the hallway with Aiden when it happened. He peeked through the staircase railing, confused. "Why is Aunt Julianne yelling?" he asked. My stomach turned cold. From the foyer, voices escalated. "She doesn't belong here." Julianne snapped. "You're blinded by grief and guilt, Nathan. But I won't let you destroy what's left of this family." "She saved him," he shouted back. "She loved him when no one else did, not even you." She's a maid. Not his mother. Then, something broke. Not a plate. Not a glass. Something in Aiden. He let go of the banister and bolted down the stairs, barefoot, pajamas dragging behind him. No, he cried, running toward me. Don't take her. Please don't take my mom. Julianne froze. Everyone did. He threw himself into my arms and sobbed, loud, raw, guttural sobs that no child should ever make. I don't want her to leave. I don't want anyone else. She's my mom now. Please, I held him close, my hand cupping the back of his head as he cried into my chest. Mr. Carter stepped forward, voice trembling but strong. You want to take this to court? Go ahead. But you'll have to explain this to a judge, he said, gesturing to his son, the child clinging to the woman who wasn't supposed to matter. Julianne's jaw was set, but her confidence faltered. The court officer shifted awkwardly. One of the lawyers lowered his folder. But the moment wasn't over. Because in the stillness, Aiden looked up at all of us. His cheeks were red. Eyes swollen. And he said one thing that changed everything. I already lost one mom. I'm not losing another. Mr. Carter swallowed hard. His eyes glistened. Mine did too. Julianne turned away, speechless. And for the first time, no one knew what would happen next. The house was quiet again, but not in peace. Julianne had left without a word, her lawyers trailing behind her, faces pale and unreadable. Mr. Carter hadn't spoken since. Aiden had cried himself to sleep in my lap on the living room couch. It should have felt like victory. But something felt off. The silence was too heavy, like it was holding back something none of us could see yet. I stayed awake long after everyone else had gone to bed. Something in Julianne's eyes before she walked out, calm, too calm, gnawed at me. By morning, I knew why. A large black car pulled into the driveway before the sun was fully up. The same court officer as before stepped out, but this time, he wasn't alone. A tall, thin man in a navy trench coat followed behind. His presence was unnerving. Methodical. Controlled. He held a folder so tightly it looked like it was part of him. Are you Maya Raymond? He asked, stepping into the hallway with sharp eyes and a colder voice. I nodded slowly, glancing toward the staircase where Aiden still slept. My name is Edward Linton. I'm with the Department of Homeland Security. My throat closed. I have a signed affidavit questioning your immigration status, he continued. We've been asked to open a formal investigation. Mr. Carter stormed out of his study. What the hell is this? Linton turned calmly. You may be unaware, sir, but harboring someone without legal documentation, especially in close contact with a minor, raises serious legal and custodial concerns. This is retaliation, he snapped. Julianne filed this. She submitted the tip, yes, Linton said. But the document in question came from inside this house. He pulled out a copy and handed it to Mr. Carter. His face fell as he scanned the paper. She accessed our staff files, he whispered. She had help. The realization struck like thunder. Julianne hadn't just fought dirty. She had someone inside the house. That night, while the house again pretended to sleep, I searched the only place no one ever bothered to check, the basement filing cabinet. Old pay slips, expired contracts, immigration verification copies for every employee. And there, in the middle of it all, was mine, scanned, exposed, and marked with a yellow sticky note that read in a tight, curled script, does this check out? M.T. Mrs. Templeton. The house manager. The woman who interviewed me without questions. Who always acted polite but never warm. Who told me to stay out of personal business from the start. She hadn't just betrayed me. She'd fed me to Julianne piece by piece. I returned upstairs in a daze. Mr. Carter was still awake, sitting in the kitchen with a whiskey glass untouched. She was always loyal to my wife, he said without turning. Even after she died, I think Templeton saw me as weak. Like I let you in. Like I was breaking everything that once made this house proper. Do you believe I used Aiden? I asked, voice barely audible. He looked at me, finally. And for once, his face showed no confusion. Just certainty. No. But they're going to try to make it look that way. In court. In the press. In front of people who don't know you. My stomach turned. Then what happens? They'll ask for an emergency hearing, he said. They'll claim the child is in danger. That his judgment is clouded. That you manipulated your way into our lives. And what will you say? He was quiet. Then, that none of that matters, because I've already filed for legal custody. My breath stopped. Of who? He looked straight into me. Of you. What? He stood, pacing now. You've been here for nearly a year. You've raised my son. You've been more of a parent than I have some days. If they want to use the law, then so will I. I'm going to petition for a work visa, sponsorship, legal residency, whatever it takes. I'm not letting them tear this family apart. But that's not how this works, I said. You can't just decide. I'm not deciding anything without you, he interrupted. But we have to fight. And this time, we do it together. I stared at him. And in that moment, it wasn't just about survival anymore. It was about love. About loyalty. And about a war we never asked for, but one we could no longer avoid. Courtroom 6B wasn't as grand as it looked in the movies. The lighting was harsh, the benches hard, and the air far too cold for a place where lives were about to be torn apart, or stitched back together. I sat at the defendant's table beside an immigration attorney Mr. Carter had hired only days ago. Across the aisle, Julianne adjusted her blazer with precise fingers, her lawyer whispering something into her ear. Mrs. Templeton sat directly behind her, straight-backed and unreadable. Aiden wasn't allowed inside. He waited with a court-appointed advocate in a quiet room 2 floors above. The judge, a woman in her 50s with sharp eyes and a tired voice, called us to order. Julianne's side went first. Maya Raymond is undocumented, unvetted, and has established an unhealthy attachment with the child in question, her lawyer began. She is neither legally authorized to work in this country nor emotionally qualified to serve as a parental figure. Her presence threatens the emotional and legal stability of the Carter household. They painted a picture of manipulation. Of boundaries crossed. Of a grieving child clinging to the wrong replacement. When they finished, the judge turned to us. Mr. Carter stood. He didn't look like a CEO or a man fighting for his legacy. He looked like a father. I won't pretend to understand the immigration system, he began, voice steady. But I do understand loss. And what it means when someone shows up when no one else does. He paused, his eyes briefly finding mine. My son didn't just lose his mother. He lost peace. Routine. Laughter. I couldn't give those back. But Maya did. Not because it was her job, but because she cared. Julianne scoffed quietly, but he continued. She didn't ask to be called Mom. Aiden gave her that name. Because to him, love is not about blood or paperwork, it's about presence. And when it mattered most, she was there. Then he handed a folder to the bailiff, who brought it to the judge. In that file are Aiden's drawings. From the last 6 months. Nearly every one shows Maya, me, and Aiden. As a family. He's asking for something in the only way a child knows how, through what he sees and feels. The judge flipped through the pages slowly. Crayon-sketched breakfasts. Gardens. Story time. Bedtime hugs. And in each, I was there. Not in uniform, not serving, but standing beside them. I filed for sponsorship, he added. If the court will allow it, I want Maya to stay legally. And safely. Not just for Aiden, but because, we need her. The judge looked at me next. You've been silent this whole time, Miss Raymond. Would you like to say anything before I make my decision? My mouth was dry. My heart hammered in my ears. But I stood. I didn't come here to be a mother, I said. I came because I needed work. I stayed because Aiden needed love. I swallowed the lump rising in my throat. I never pretended to replace his mother. I only wanted to help him breathe again. A pause. And somewhere along the way, I started breathing too. The judge sat back, her expression unreadable. I'll return in 15 minutes with my ruling, she said, then disappeared behind the chambers. The silence afterward was unbearable. Julianne stood slowly, adjusting her purse with a triumphant glint in her eye. She's not going to rule in your favor, she whispered to Mr. Carter. This system doesn't protect people like her. But she was wrong. When the judge returned, her voice was calm but final. Temporary custody will remain with Mr. Carter. There is insufficient evidence of manipulation or harm. Furthermore, this court supports his petition for a legal sponsorship of Maya Raymond. Immigration proceedings will continue under supervision, but she will not be removed from the home. My knees buckled slightly. Behind me, someone gasped. Julianne stood frozen, color draining from her face. You're making a mistake, she hissed. No, the judge replied. You did. When you forgot that children need love, not perfection. The gavel struck. It was over. But just as relief started to settle in, Mr. Carter leaned toward me and whispered something I never expected. There's something else I didn't tell you. I looked at him, confused. He hesitated. Aiden's mother, she wrote a letter before she died. For whoever ended up raising him. I blinked, stunned. She asked me to find the person who would love him like she would've. I think she knew she wouldn't be around long. My heart stopped. He handed me a folded, worn envelope. My name was on it. I opened it slowly, my hands trembling. And as I read the first line, written in a woman's gentle script, I realized. She had chosen me, long before I ever knew I belonged. The letter sat in my lap for hours before I found the courage to open it again. I read it once in the courtroom, just enough to catch the first few lines. But now, sitting on the edge of the bed in Aiden's room, watching him sleep, cheeks still tear-streaked from everything he'd been through, I needed to read every word slowly, to let her voice live inside me for just a moment longer. To the woman who will love my son like I would have. Thank you. I don't know who you are. Maybe a nanny. Maybe a friend. Maybe someone who walked into his life by accident. But if you're reading this, it means you stayed. You earned his trust. His heart. Please know. I was scared, even before the doctors told me the truth. I wrote this letter because I knew Aiden might grow up without me. And I needed him to have someone soft to land on. Love him. Listen to him. Let him cry without shame. Teach him that kindness is strength. And tell him I never left, not really. I live in the parts of him that still love fiercely. And if you're reading this, you are his mother now. I wiped my tears on the same scarf I wore the day Aiden first called me Mom. Mr. Carter hadn't read the letter himself. He said it was hers, meant only for me and the one who chose to stay. The courtroom victory felt like a dream now, real, but floating on nerves and adrenaline. The sponsorship process would take time. Immigration lawyers were already guiding us through the next steps. There would still be hearings, paperwork, background checks. But I no longer lived in fear of losing everything overnight. More importantly, Aiden no longer feared waking up alone. Julianne didn't show her face again. The court's ruling had been clear, and the public backlash, after the story quietly made its way to a family blog, had forced her to step away from the Carter Foundation indefinitely. Mrs. Templeton left the estate within a week. She didn't say goodbye. And I didn't ask her to. The staff dynamic shifted. Walls softened. People smiled more. Maybe it was the story. Maybe it was just relief. But something changed. Mr. Carter, Nathan, he changed, too. We started having tea in the evenings after Aiden went to bed. He stopped hiding in his study. He asked about Lahore, my sister, my childhood. And one night, over jasmine tea, he looked at me and said, "I think she chose right." I smiled, but didn't speak. Because deep down, I believed it, too. It wasn't perfect. There were hard days. Days when the past echoed through the halls or Aiden asked questions I wasn't ready to answer. But we faced those days together. As a family.